I love those bookcases behind you as well, Dr. Eva.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's actually really cute when my the local library closed. My parents were like, "No, you can't have that closed." And now that they're retired, they're also running the local library.
How good. That is amazing. I feel like during these times we realise the importance of books as well.
Yeah.
To read I've been reading all the ones anyway on my bedside table that have been there for, maybe 3 or 4 years. But
Oh
over the
yeah.
last couple of months I've actually started getting through them.
You always have these like really amazing books that you never get the time to read, and now finally it's like, my God, I should have read it 10 years ago.
Yes, exactly. You'll be able to tell once everyone joins us. You'll be able to tell them that exactly now. These are the books. These are the titles I've been reading over the last couple of months. All right, we might just give everyone another minute just to jump on board, and then we can get started. All right. I reckon we might get underway, shall we? We've given everyone a couple of minutes to jump on board. Thank you so much for being here. It's awesome to get a chance to have a chat with you today on behalf of Terminal X. My name is Neve Owens. I'm a sports journalist on TV and radio, and I'm really pumped to be here today to chat with one of our TX creators. Her name is Dr. Eva-Marie Muller-Stuler. Terminal X is all about creating a life you love, and I know you guys have some massive decisions coming up in terms of subjects, in terms of uni options as you work towards doing exactly that. And in her role as a thought leader at IBM, Dr. Eva is advising governments on AI and machine learning. She has spoken at the United Nations and UNESCO, and at Terminal X, she's helping introduce us to the world of AI, machine learning, and robotics. Dr. Eva, hello. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. It's a real pleasure, and I'm looking forward to sharing my passion and maybe, give some of you an insight on how amazing my job is.
I love that. I cannot wait. Let's start with the basics, shall we? Because thought leader, data scientist, they're pretty awesome titles. What do they mean? Tell us a little bit more about your industry.
Okay, so data science basically means, or data scientist collects all the data artifacts, all the traces you leave behind. It could be the things you do on your mobile phone. It could be your travel behavior, your location. It could be how often you call the call center, every little piece, and then tries to find a pattern. Tries to find a pattern for a purpose to analyze that makes things more efficient for companies or governments. Thought leader basically means you're not just really well established in your job, you know the bigger picture as well. So in my role, it's a lot about understanding the impact on society, understanding the impact on corporations, and having an awareness of saying, okay, what does it actually mean on the ethical side? Where's the world moving with our current changes? So, for example, especially now in crisis, is an understanding of how can we help and how can we predict and what the future might bring and act on that.
We realise just how important those areas are at times like this. I want to hit you with a stereotype first up, just so you can totally debunk it off the top. When we think of data scientists, we can think of one guy sitting in front of a computer, maybe wearing glasses. Can you just debunk that for us off the top?
Oh my God, I often hear that. And it's like, oh my God, I never thought that you don't look like a data scientist. And I was like, Yeah, and you don't look like a misogynist.
Totally.
But here we are. And it is, you don't have to look like a stereotype to be good in your job. And we see that in every single job. And that's the same in data science. Yes, there is what we call male pale stale. We have nerdy guys with glasses. But actually, when it comes to really being good in data science, it is about understanding the bigger picture, and it is about understanding how things work together. So if you as a company hire a data scientist, you put him into or her into IT department and say, do whatever you want and expect them to just sit there in front of their computer and crunch numbers, that is actually the recipe for failure, because in that situation, the person doesn't know what actually drives the business. What are the answers they're looking for? And if you just look for simple correlation, you're running in the wrong direction and you will not be able to actually gain impact. To be good in data science, you need to understand what is a company doing, what is a government doing, and what is the goal you're looking for, and put all these pieces together. And that is actually not a nerdy single focused job. It's actually very creative and very, yeah, I think like out of the box, and they, what about this? What about this? And the best solutions we actually always developed, and we had data signals that nobody ever used before.
So communication would actually be a massive part of your role.
Yes, it is. We always say data science is a team sport. So you don't have one type of data scientist. You don't have one person who's just coding the data. You have somebody who's dealing with all the data coming in, preparing that, cleaning that, ensuring that there's a smooth pipeline. And you also have a job that is becoming more and more popular. It's called the data visualizationist, and saying we have these outcomes, but what is actually the decision makers in the business really want to see? How do I present data in the most efficient way, in the way that a CEO looks at the dashboard, in a second he has the right answers, and that easy to digest, or you could say in fishing, the fish has to be tasteful for the bait has to be tasteful for the fish and not for the fisherman. And the data journalist actually says, okay, this is the way we need to present the data at the end for somebody to really understand what it means and take the right action.
What an interesting space to be working in. I want to ask you more about your career journey and how you got there, but can we throw it all the way back to begin with? How early was this an area that you were passionate about? And thinking back, how did that kind of manifest when you were young?
So I always loved mathematics. I was always puzzles and so on, but I never thought that I would be a mathematician. I had, when I was 13, I had a math teacher who always said like, oh yeah, Eva, one day you'll be an amazing mathematics professor. And I just brushed it off. I was like, yeah, right. One thing that won't happen for sure. I will study biology or medicine or something else, but definitely not math. And even in my love to mathematics, the road was bumpy. I was not always good in math. I had my grades often depended highly on my teachers and how well they were able to share their passion. And so yeah, and when I finished finished school, I decided to study mathematics. And my math teacher in my last year, he was like, "Really? Are you sure? Are you really sure?" I mean, there are other people in the year who should do that, but not you.
And I guess part of that love comes from the fact that you really see the creative side of the subject.
Yeah, and a lot of the math that I do is by gut feeling. So I have a feeling about what the number is that I'm looking for, and then I prove that it's the right number. And especially when you study math, it's probably one of the from all the STEM subjects, it's the one with the fewest numbers. If you hardly ever calculate. It's all about thinking, proving, showing that this is equal to that, and the concept of math, and not about calculations. And so yeah, and when I studied math, I actually studied math with a minor of medicine at the beginning, but the two campuses were so far away that it was just not possible. And so I had to drop one of them, and so I dropped medicine, and I did business and computer science on top of that. But the job data scientist didn't exist. So everyone was like, why are you doing this random combination? I was like, oh, because I like them. And yeah, until I think the title data scientist only exists for the last 6 years. So, and then everyone's like, yeah, that's a perfect combination. And I was like, yeah, but it was more by chance, to be honest.
By following your passions and things that you
Yeah,
enjoyed.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. Working hard and never giving up and doing what probably the only thing that really, if times get tough, I'd still enjoy doing them.
As you've learned more about that space, about the challenges, and I guess about the possibilities as well, have you found that your passion has shifted into different areas that maybe you had no idea about before?
Um, yes. So, I mean, at school, I was exploring many things. I was playing bass in a band. I did a lot of electronics. I never really, I did start coding very young, but I would have never said it was like my complete passion. I wasn't able to sit down at the computer long enough to really get into the Zoom and really start enjoying it as a child. That came, I think, when I was 16 or 15, 16. That's where I started to get an interest into coding. Before that, it was really more, yeah, playing games with friends, lots of sports. I used to do a lot of figure skating 5 times a week when I was younger. So the transition to actually saying math is my passion came in my last years of school. And I think
You,
actually the trigger point was when I went to England for a year and I had to pick my A levels. And I picked math only because I expected it's easy because you don't need that much English. Um, and that was an amazing teacher. So
that must have been such a formative experience for you. You were 16, you moved to England, you went to boarding school. You've just mentioned you didn't have a lot of English at that time. How influential, I guess, was that year?
it was hard. I mean, I spent many hours crying on the phone to my parents and saying, should I come back? And actually, I mean, after for the Christmas break, I packed all my things and I was like, I'm not going back. I've done 3 months, that's enough. And 2 weeks back home, I was like, actually, it wasn't that bad. And there's still lots of things that I haven't finished. I want to go back for the next term. So it was, I think it was a big challenge, but I think it's important to find these challenges and find a way to adapt and get through them. And we see it at the current crisis. I mean, everybody has to adapt to a complete new style of living, a new way of working, a new way of running your businesses, running your teams, running your families. And I think it really being resilient and being strong and saying, okay, I've done many crises like that in similar ways. That is something that is in you and it helps you going and being creative and not giving in.
I want to ask you a bit more about some of those challenges because early in your career, after you'd finished university, you'd finished your study, you had some pretty tough experiences. Can you tell us what that was like and I guess what you learnt from that in the long run?
So when I started my career, I started at Ernst Young in financial audit, corporate restructuring, and I moved then quickly after half a year to corporate restructuring. And it's a tough business because the companies you're consulting, they're basically on the edge of insolvency. So you're always dealing with many people being very worried about losing their job. So the time pressure is immense. We used to work 16-hour days easily. We were hours of sleep a night. Sleeping in the office wasn't something that was rare. And I think this really, yeah, gets a lack of sleep often makes people very mean and very intolerant. And we often had a bit of a blame culture. So that was sometimes really tough. I was like, oh God, why are people on top of all this stress? Why are there so many political fights? Why are there so many things going wrong? And people not being nice to it. And I remember one day calling my dad. I was like, why is work like that? Why are people like that? And I think what my dad gave me one advice, and he said, remember that for the rest of your career, and never become like that. And I think that was an amazing lesson to learn. That I actually learned two things. One of them is everybody has their areas where they're amazing, and use people in your team according to their strengths, and don't take them down because of their weaknesses. We all have weaknesses, but by focusing on what they can't do, is nobody benefits from that. And the other thing is really never turn against your own people. Always find a way to make them grow, make them better. And I hope that's something I live for my team.
Well, you're a mentor for a number of startups now. So obviously that is something that you've taken on board. And I guess that lesson of the need to really surround yourself with good people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's an important lesson, and I think it goes both ways. So it's also for my career. Is I I'm performing best when I join teams where everyone is really keen on pushing things forward, where everyone has found their passion, and they can be completely diverse, completely different. But I love I'm absolutely love working with people who are smarter than me, and where I can learn tricks. And so yeah, definitely.
Awesome attitude to have. Guys, if you're watching at home, we've got another 10 minutes or so with Dr. Eva here, but you'll be able to talk to Dr. Eva directly over on our Slack channel as soon as we wrap up here. So sign up now if you're keen. It's free. All you have to do is head to terminalx.co, register. We'll send you through a link to our Slack channel, and that's where Dr. Eva will be as soon as we wrap up here. You can win a pair of Nike sneakers as well just by jumping into Slack and joining the conversation. So make sure you do that. Dr. Eva, we've kind of mentioned it, we've skirted around it, but ultimately you are a problem solver, and that is a really unique area in itself to be in. How do you approach a problem, a new brief? What's your starting point?
So I think I normally like to fade out and say, I so often go to clients and they say, oh, you have this problem, and you realize what you think is your problem isn't actually your problem. And you can then break it down in different pieces and say, okay, what is actually the core problem we're dealing with, and what are consequences out of that problem, and where's the beginning, and then say we break it up in different tranches and say we start with this, and then with this, and then with this, and then you find a way to basically go through it. So a simple example could be a company saying, I don't know why, but we're losing customers. And or it could be they're saying the competition is stealing us customers. We want to take down the competition. And in the conversation, you realize it's not just the competition is stealing the customers. It's actually there's a reason why customers are becoming less loyal, why they're leaving. And so you can say, okay, what are the different places where you deal with your customers? Do you have, for example, a Slack channel, or do you have online help? What are the communications like that? What is your call center doing? I mean, if you have an issue and you're on hold for half an hour every time you call the call center, you are going to leave the company. If you contact them 5 times and they can never help, you're going to leave the yeah, it's a telco company or whoever. And also, you can then start analyzing, for example, the communication. You can analyze where's your pricing, and then you break it down into different areas. For example, where's your retail? So is it your pricing? Is it your product mix? Is it the location that you're at? And you look at all the different angles of your customer touch points. And then you can say, if we optimize every single one, there would be no reason to go to the competition.
What an awesome example. You've spoken at the United Nations, Dr. Eva. What an incredible forum and opportunity to influence change on a global stage. What was that experience like? And tell us a little bit about the subject of your talk.
I was talking at an event about blockchain and our sustainable development goals. And we have 17 sustainable development goals from the United Nations in the world. For example, no hunger, um, equality, diversity, education, and basically 17 goals where we say we really want to develop them to make the world a better place. And it was about how the technologies, for example, blockchain, AI, and so on, can be used to make us realize these goals by 2030. So saying, for example, how can we see a lot of AI being used in nonprofit and environmental projects. For example, the whole food chain supply from what is happening on the field, when is the best time to harvest, forecasting how much food is needed in what area, forecasting how much investments are needed and how are they spent. And how can we use AI together with other technology, for example, blockchain, to do something good for the world.
And that's the super positive area that AI can influence. AI and ethics is a really interesting space as well. Have you turned down projects based on your ethics before? And is it easy to just say no?
It depends on the company that you're working for, but especially at IBM, I would say it's easy, yes, because we appreciate that everybody has different values and different backgrounds. And even at IBM, we have an ethic board. So things where we say that is not protecting your private information enough, we're not going to do that. And we have, so with every high risk AI project, we take it to the ethic board, and then there's a decision like, does it make sense? AI ethics, I mean, I was working with AI ethics for 8 years, 9 years now, just when the field started to involve questions on how are we dealing with intelligent weapons? How are we dealing with solutions that are developed and they are not fair? Especially the early AI was trained on what you mentioned at the beginning, young boys with glasses, and most of them were white. So, for example, we saw image recognition not working for people with different backgrounds. We saw highly biased solutions based on the data. I was actually once, I would actually say, sexually harassed by a robot. The things he was saying to me were so inappropriate, and when I complained to the person presenting the robot, she was like, yeah, he's very flirty with women. I was like, no, he's crossing a line. And it's not a he, it's a it. There's more to a man than just plastic and metal and a bit of code. And so it is really, AI ethics has become an important topic on saying, how do we make sure that AI is fair? How do we make sure it's explainable? Because if you apply for a bank loan and they say no, you do want to know why. And if they just say, oh, because the robot said so, or AI solution said so, that's not good enough. Especially if you apply and your husband apply and he gets it and you don't. You want to know, I'm sorry, but we live together, we're married, we have one income. Can you explain why? And so these are all issues that have become more and more important and are more and more discussed. And it's actually another interesting job. And I think with AI, we're creating more and more jobs on the outside of the core of data science. For example, what are the legal implications? What are the ethical and the society questions we're raising with it? And we're opening a world to far more creativity jobs around us as well. So yeah, ethical, and it's a big business value as well, because you don't, as a company, you don't want to be in the news for having done something wrong. And there are more and more cases. Normally, you have to dig deep to find them in the internet, but there have been embarrassing cases where companies did something wrong, and it went through the media, and it cost them a lot of money to make it good again and say, I'm sorry. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a
bit as
huge
well.
amount of responsibility in that space as well. One of the things you've shared with us on Terminal X, and if you haven't already, guys, jump over to terminalx.co. Make sure you sign up so you can continue this conversation with Dr. Eva in a few minutes' time. When we lose her from this forum, she'll be on our Slack channel. So jump on board over there. But Dr. Eva, one of the things you've shared with us is, I guess, your life motto, really, and it's around the lines of just go for it. Is that your advice for students, regardless of what areas they're hoping to forge a career in?
Yes, I think there are so many people not daring their dreams, and I think a lot of my friends and me, we were guilty of that as well. The question of like, am I really good enough, or I'm afraid to fail, or I'll do it tomorrow. There are so many reasons not to do something, that if you follow them, it's you never have enough time to do all what you want. You never have enough time to exercise. You never have enough time to read the books that you've been wanting to read for 10 years. But if you just start, that's always just go for it, start, and embrace it, embrace the journey. There is no such thing as failure. There's learning a lessons and growing from that. But yeah, dare to do things.
I love your opinion on networking as well, because at different times we've kind of seen networking as a bit of a dirty word. Why
Yeah.
has your opinion on that changed over time?
So when I started my career, I thought like, oh no, I'm not a networker, because networking is taking it for the position they hold, and not it's not showing interest in the person. But I realized, no, actually networking is also about finding friends who work in the same field than you are, and having sparring partners who bounce ideas back and forth. So from most of my network, I now say that they're not people I use for my advantage, because that doesn't work. People realize when you try to use them, or and it's basically what develops is it's mutual friendships. And I have what I would call probably my team Eva around me. There are people who have different gifts and different strengths, and they're my support network. They give me the energy. They build me up again when I'm down. They say, no, Eva, of course you can do it. Or and I was like, oh my God, I went to MTX and it was so bad. They'll be the ones saying, no, Eva, at least you were there. You did it. And all the other people who didn't dare to go there, just you followed your own motto. And I think that is something that is really important. And that's in your network is something that in the end it's mutual. You give it, and you give a lot to other people as well.
And
But what
Team
you
Eva is
imagine,
growing as well, because we're expanding Team Eva on Terminal X. And I love that you're going to be opening up the world of data science for our TXs. You're going to be exploring things like AI, machine learning, and robotics. What kind of form will that take? Because that's a huge area to be entering into.
it is. And I think for me, the starting point is really understanding the bigger picture. Understanding what is there to AI and robotics. How do you approach it? How do you approach a problem on saying, for example, I want to build a game, or I want to stop people leaving my company, or pick a topic and say, how would I approach this from a mindset, and what is the tools that I need? So it's not about sitting down and coding. It's really more about understanding how the pieces go together, and saying, okay, maybe let's assume you're running a business, um, selling lemonade in your dad's garden, and what would be the information you would need? Oh, you would actually need to know, when are people passing, what is the best corner to be standing on, how do you find that information, and how would you then build your store where you're selling lemonade in a data driven business. So really the thinking behind it, and also thinking about what would be the impact on the world around you when you do something like that.
I reckon you're going to get a heap more questions, even just tonight. Dr. Eva, unfortunately, we're out of time on this platform, but the good news is that Dr. Eva is going to go straight from here across to our Slack channel to continue the conversation. We'd love you to join us there. Just head to terminalx.co, sign up, it's free. We'll send you a link to our Slack channel, and all you have to do is jump on in, join the conversation. You could win a new pair of Nike kicks as well. So make sure you join in. Don't forget, Dr. Eva will also be part of our next panel discussion here in just under an hour's time, actually. She's going to be joined by a former Matilda, now TV host and absolute firecracker of a human, Alicia Ferguson, as well as gaming commentator and player Corey Hallows. So you might know her as Vandy. So make sure you jump in and join three awesome global citizens in that conversation in about an hour's time. Dr. Eva, very briefly before I let you go, as your final sell to our school leavers who are making some big decisions about their futures, what makes your industry such an awesome one to be a part of?
I think we're at the core of having an impact at the world. So first of all, the way we're moving to a more data-driven, more technology-driven time, actually, the decades coming up, you'll always have a job. You'll always have a job that is interesting, and you always have a job where you can actually have an impact and say, I learned these tools, and now I can go and change my corner of the world.
Dr. Eva, it has been so wonderful to meet you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the question on Slack.
Please do. You'll have time to ask all the questions that I've missed. Head on over to our Slack channel now. You'll be able to see Dr. Eva there. Thank you so much for joining us at home as well. Hopefully we'll see you in about an hour's time for another great panel chat. See you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.